Okay, so I wanted to change it up on this one because I don't have a guest for this podcast specifically. We have some very exciting guests coming up, but I sort of wanted to take an opportunity to have a bit more of like a free form rant. And I'm thinking about how to approach this conversation, and I think I've finally figured out the best angle, right? I wanted to talk about the social contract. And I think the social contract is an element in society that we are so far away from, we've forgotten what it is, what the purpose of it is, and like what the value of it is, right? So really simply put, the social contract is what as a society we agree to allow the government to have an authority of violence over us, right? So really simply put, us as a people, we say, hey, you, the state, you have legitimacy in governance over the authority of violence, i.e., you can legislate laws. If people don't follow the laws, you are allowed to punitively punish people, right? We as a society allow you to do that because the social contract here is that you're benefiting us. We're getting a benefitism. So as we are giving up our some of our freedoms, we are benefiting from this, right? So it's like that. So that's the idea of it really on a high level, right? And the thing about the social contract is that I feel like it has really changed. And where we're at in 2025, it's completely gone. We've moved from a society of abundance to a society of scarcity. No longer do we exist in a world of a social contract. We live in a world of a social contract that benefits groups, not the society, right? So the social contract is no longer benefiting the total sum of society. It only benefits certain groups of society, right? And I can speak to that directly right now. And I know I'm probably gonna get canceled, shadow banned, everything for saying this, but really simply put, let's just look down, let's just look at from a policy perspective the lockdowns during the pandemic, right? They made no sense from a holistic perspective. They make sense if you are legislating for the baby boomer generation, right? So if you are essentially legislating the social contract for a smaller group of society, which are the seniors, you would shut down the economy, shut down countries, shut down whole nation states, right? Okay, for the benefit of what is from a highly technical perspective, the lowest value proportion of the demography because they have the least time left on this planet. Okay, so just really from a technical perspective, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, just look at it from that. I'm not, and this is illustrated in so many different ways, but that's an example of something called a gerontocracy, where essentially policymakers are now doing policy that benefits old people because policymakers are also old themselves. And again, this is what I'm trying to say. The social contract is not benefiting the whole of society. Okay, that's one example there. The next thing I wanted to say that really emphasizes and illustrates this whole idea that we no longer live in a world that actually benefits the whole society as a whole and that we really are based in group dynamics is this Charlie Kirk thing, right? Because at the end of the day, it's really funny. We live in this like global village where, things happen out the world and they'll affect you in like your daily life, right? And a lot of people are saying, oh, there's no importance of this whole Charlie Kirk story, blah, blah, especially in Canada. Everybody in Canada is saying this is an American story. Well, I don't want to say everything from what I've seen online, which is very anecdotal and shouldn't be trusted. A lot of people in Canada are also saying, why should we focus on this on this Charlie Kirk story? You should follow on this Charlie Kirk story because it is the greatest illustration of group dynamics. Because essentially, what's happening here, aside from the point of this guy, all of that stuff, what's happening here is the most clear illustration of I don't give a fuck about you because you're not in my group, right? That's the most important part of what's happening with this whole story. There is such a clear fissure, such a clear decoupling in society, and that should be what should be what is of more concern. And in my humble opinion, don't get me wrong, yes, there's many reasons why Kimmel gets fired, right? For sure, that are like not the best and they're corruption based and it's alluded to the FCC. But at the same time, too, the climate right now, I could have made this podcast like 2 weeks ago. I could have made this podcast the second dude got shot. I didn't. I waited because the climate right now is a bit ridiculous. And if you don't realize that, then you lack empathy. But the climate right now is at a high, it's at a peak. And it's important for people, especially if you have a voice, if you have a platform, for you to not instigate. That's the most important thing right now. Tone down the temperature. You know what I'm trying to say? We really need to look at the rhetoric on whatever side you're on here and really ask yourself the question: is this a society you want to live in? And that brings me to the next thing too, because going back to what I was trying to say, we live in such a decoupling society, right? On one level, we live in a decoupling society because now we all consume information through digital hardware and segmented platforms. I'm getting too far away from it. We all consume information from our phones, and our phones divide us all up. So if you go and talk to the person right next to you and ask them to look at their Discover page on Insta or on Netflix or whatever, you'll probably notice it's very different than yours. We're all echo chambered now, right? So because of that, we're not getting the same information. The other day, I made an Instagram story about the whole Charlie Kirk thing because I personally on my Instagram was seeing a lot of people talking about how he was happy being dead, and then I was seeing a lot of people on the other side get angry about it, and I was just like, we need to slow this down, like calm it down, because that's all I could see on my social media. My mom called me. My mom was like, "Yo, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck's happening here?" Because right now she's in Kenya, so she didn't even know about the whole Charlie Kirk thing. So she's asking me like, "Yo, you sound very elevated in your tone, like you're like very concerned, like what's happening here?" And it's because the information had not even made her away. And that's what I'm trying to say. On these different levels as a society, we have been decoupled. We are not unified anymore. We are all in our little groups for whatever reason or another. So that happened. The other thing I want to talk about the decoupling of society in Canada specifically is from a socioeconomic perspective. Like, I can only speak for Toronto, anecdotally, but this city is so broken and divided. I'm telling you right now, the stories I hear from all ends are crazy. Okay, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. You have you have you have immigrants who are coming to the country, they can't find a job, and they're being treated poorly. They're having a rough time, right? You have immigrants who have been here for 2 years, right, on an open work permit, right, that were brought here for economic activity, were given jobs because these jobs are like, you have an open work permit, so I can pay you less and treat you worse, right? And we brought them here for GDP. We brought them here for economic activity to increase GDP, right, which worked out for us. And then now after 2 years, we're telling them, hey, thanks, get the fuck out of here, right? That's a regular story. Okay, that's happening. On the other end of it, you have Canadian millennials, right, who have been underpinned in this economy for quite some time, right, like who have not been able to come up at all. On the other end, you have millennials who have been able to benefit from this economy, right? And in my opinion, they're very aloof and on some level almost predatorial in their operations, right? In terms of I can only talk about entrepreneurs and basically their idea of exploiting workers in lower wage paying areas to benefit their companies rather than in any way looking to pay sustainable wages to people that live in their country. And I get it. How can you do that when in Canada we don't really support innovation or subsidize innovative like sectors of our economy? We set up this whole environment for multiple reasons. Okay, right? We are no longer a society. We are individual groups vying for whatever they can anymore now, right? That's what it is. Like, it's all every man, woman, and group for themselves. We no longer have the social contract. And that's what's causing all of these problems. That's why we are where we're at today. There's so much hate. There's so much division. There's so much vile rhetoric and just shit. Because here's the thing, I grew up in this country. Like, I grew up in this country. I came here in 99. Okay. And Canada is not the same way it is right now. It's just not. Like, everything's changed so dramatically differently. And it's not for the better. It's not for the better. When I first came to this country, all the Canadians were super nice. I first came here to Alberta. When I moved to Alberta, obviously I came from Africa. Everybody from Alberta was like, hey, I don't have any African friends. Do you want to be my friend? I want to learn what Africans are like. You know what I mean? That was very interesting. Canadians very warm, very friendly to immigrants. You know what I'm trying to say? That's changed dramatically now. You know what I'm trying like it's day and night. The amount of anti-Indian racism I see around is crazy. And here's the thing, if I'm being perfectly frank, I get why y'all are racist. You know what I'm trying to say? But I'm black. I came as an African. I can't vibe with that, right? But it's crazy how much things have changed. Canadians used to be nice and friendly people, and that's completely changed. And I'll just go back to it again. There's also just this dereliction of the suffering of society because again, I'm telling you, like specifically in Toronto, you can talk to one person who has no idea that anything's happening around the world because they work in the public sector. They've never had a problem in their life. They were able to get into the real estate market at like 25 because they took out OSAP when they didn't need to because their parents paid for school and they took that money and bought a house. You know what I'm trying to say? So now they're chilling. They're caking. They have no idea of any of the problems in the society. Then on the other end, you have people that are living in hell. You have people that are starving. You know what I'm trying to say? And it's crazy because there is such a fissure. There is no conversation happening between these two groups. And even on another level, I just want to bring this up. Over the last 3 years, only about 20 to 30% of the people I met in Toronto are from Canada or from Toronto. Everyone else is a foreigner. Everyone else is a foreigner, and everyone has such ridiculous individual stories. Anyhow, right? So let me just get back to what I'm trying to say here. So the social contract is important. The social contract is important because that's what allows people to That's what allows for a cohesive society to exist. So I'll give you this example, right? If I, and we could, because we live in this weird time right now where it's like society is no longer abiding by the rules of the social contract, but we as a people have not really realized that as of yet, right? So it's like we live in this world that's based on a social contract, but the social contract is not benefiting everybody in society. And the people that are not being benefited don't realize that they have an investment, they have a stake in the society. They should be facilitated. But now we've gone to this weird, toxic, exploitative point in the economy and in our society where people that are being exploited have a low self worth and they're okay feeling like that because the society dictates it, because there's this gaslighting. There's this gaslighting of lack of suffering. And again, I can speak to it in Toronto, I can speak to it in Canada because the economy is shit. As a worker, as a consumer, as an entrepreneur, this economy is shitting the fucking bed, and I can't see nothing about that on CP24. And it drives me insane. And shame on you, CP24, and shame on you, CBC, because you should be the voice of the people in this city, in this country. And that means everybody, right? So it's like, at the very least, you know, and maybe that's just like at the end of the day, like I guess like them or the media is the fourth pillar of society. You know what I'm trying to say? And it makes sense. If the social contract is no longer benefiting all society, why the fuck would the news try to tell the story of everybody that's being like hit in society? Why would they do that? No, they don't want to say that, because if the news goes about talking, the news starts talking about a recession and poor economic standards, then that affects my RRSP. That affects my index fund, because you're not going to talk about a recession, and now you're going to see markets drop because you're talking about a recession, and that's not positive. So we got to be as positive and pessimistic as possible, so we get more investment in here. Because the more we lie, the more we create this story of this bullshit story that the economy is okay. We can keep on fucking keep on printing more money. We can't even do that no more. You know what I'm trying to say? Because of where interest rates are right now and inflation. It's crazy. Anyhow, I just wanted to rant about that because that's where we're at. That's why we're at where we are in the world right now. This social contract is no longer benefiting everybody in society. And on a go forward basis, that's actually scary, because then what you're going to see is conflict within the society, because you're going to see the people with the wealth and the people with the political gravitas, right? Essentially start installing policy that really only benefits that group, and that group's become smaller and smaller proportion of society. And this is when you're going to see more conflict, more security being enforced in policy. You know what I'm trying to say? And I'll tell you right now, on a go forward basis, as a millennial, my generation, part of them are fucking disgusting. And like you don't we don't want to be on this track because these people completely lack empathy. This is the generation of people that saw the Wolf of Wall Street and didn't realize it was a tragedy. You know what I'm trying? So now imagine you as a Gen Z, you as a Gen Alpha, right? Now that class of people are the policy makers in a world where a social contract doesn't exist anymore. So, you know, that was it. That's my rant. I just wanted to get that off my chest. That's it for today. Hopefully, this doesn't get me too canceled, right? Like, I went for a walk and I forgot to add the last part. Our current society is very mean, you know? We lack kindness, we lack empathy, we lack sympathy to some extent. And what I wanted to say is that another value of the social contract is that all of those are symptoms or byproducts of a unified social contract. So if you think about it, when you live in a society, like being nice and kindness and empathy and sympathy, these are all socially created ideas, right? That essentially allow society to be nicer or better to live in, right? So I'm going to be nice and kind to people because they're going to be nice and kind to me. I'm going to have empathy for people because it should be beneficial for me to see other people's perspective. I'm going to have sympathy for other people because I should have sympathy for my neighbor. The golden rule, treat others until you want to be treated by yourself, right? So when we live in a society now where the social contract is gone, and now we are now more so focusing on group dynamics, a couple of things happen. The first thing is that when you live in a society that doesn't have a social contract and is focusing on group dynamics, well, what's the point of being nice to somebody that's not in my group? I'm expecting you're not going to be nice back to me because you're not in my group. Because when we're in this world where it's the group instead of the whole society as a sum, you have competition in between groups for scarce resources, right? So it's like, why would I be nice to somebody that's not in my group? Why would I have empathy, sympathy? And you see this across the board, right? Like men, women, old, young, whatever race you want, right? Like that's basically what's happening. These groups no longer have empathy, sympathy, and kindness for each other because they no longer operate within a unified social contract that benefits all of them, right? So this is also why you see things going crazy with the Gen Z population as well, too. Because at the end of the day, again, I'm giving up some freedoms to be in the social contract because I'm expecting to be given some benefits. A lot of Gen Z right now can't get jobs. They have no way of making money at all. They need to make money. The social contract is not facilitating ways for them to capitalize themselves. So they're figuring it out. You know what I mean? And all you people are surprised when you see the Kia Boys or you see these B&Es happening in the GTA or just like general Grand Theft Autos going up and like, yo, the street, like these kids are hungry. There's no jobs for them and nobody has empathy for them, right? So what are they going to do? They're going to figure it out themselves. Sorry, this is just something I thought about on the walk as to why society and culture currently has a certain shitty flavor to it. And that's it. That's it for today. That's the last part. Thank you very much.